Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. And we have our special guest, Matt May, here today. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Rhonda. Hi, David. It's great to be back with you both.
Likewise. It's just a treat every time we see you, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you.
And welcome, everyone, this is episode 313, and we welcome our listeners around the country and around the world.
By the way, Matt, I have a little information for you. A young man has joined the Tuesday group who heard about the Warsaw First World Congress for Team CBT, which was, Rhonda was there, you were there, in Warsaw, Poland a couple of weeks ago. And then he's a graduate student, and he joined our Tuesday training group at Stanford. And by the way, if there's any listeners now who are therapists and you want some extra free training, we give unlimited free training in the Tuesday group. And of course, Rhonda has her Wednesday group as well. But at any rate, he came and he absolutely loved this World Congress. And I said, well, did you hear Matt May? Because he was one of my students. And he just was talking like he'd been in heaven. Like he just thought you were like a god. And
wow, that feels so good to hear. Thank you, David, for passing that along. It was so meaningful to be able to spend time with him. I remember him, and I think I know who you're talking about.
Oh, cool.
As well as there were many therapists there from Poland and also Ukraine. It was nice to offer some training and support for them because they're dealing with a lot right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. Yeah. So, Rhonda.
So let's dive in and ask you some Ask David questions. And you're kind enough to put my question in the very beginning of this, which is, David and Matt, how do you respond to someone who is always yes-butting you?
And can you give us an example to bring it to life a little bit, and then we will do some role play and demo on this excellent question, because it sure is common in therapy and in life in general.
Okay, so let's say you've done a lot. I'm working with someone who has social anxiety, and we've done a lot of empathy, and we've talked about all the things that they don't want to do. The process resistance, and they're saying that they want to do, for example, shame attacking. And we've gone through all the reasons they may not want the outcome of overcoming their social anxiety. So we've done the outcome resistance, and they say they're gung-ho and they're ready to do some shame attacking, and they've helped design even the shame attacking experiment. And then when it's time to go out into the world and do the shame attacking, they say, yes, but that's a really great idea, but this is happening, or yes, that's a great idea, but I'm kind of busy, or.
Great. Okay. So let's dive in. Well stated. And why don't we make Matt your patient and you be the shrink? And by the way, this might be something helpful for those of you who aren't shrinks, because in our recent poll, we found that 2/3 of you are non-shrinks and 1/3 of you are shrinks. But for those of you who are non-shrinks, we are often trying to, help our son or our daughter or whatever, and they might be complaining, or a friend, and then you make a helpful suggestion, and then they yes but you, and it can be very frustrating. Do you find that frustrating too, Rhonda?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have a personal example about that too. I can do.
Okay. Well, let's do the social anxiety one first, and then we'll do the personal one. But this is certainly a common problem, and fortunately, it has a 100% certain amazing technique that works 100% of the time, and you will now demonstrate it, and Matt will be your patient.
Okay, I hope so. Oh, Matt, I'm so excited. Today's the day that we've decided we're going to do some.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah,
go ahead. I'm the therapist, right?
Yeah, right.
Because I can have Matt be the therapist because we
No. Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry. You're on the right track.
Okay, so Matt, I'm really excited. Today's the day we decided to do some shame attacking, and we've planned to take a walk up to the grocery store and, do some really fun stuff. So let's get going.
Oh, Rhonda, yeah, I'm super excited too that, we designed that shame attacking exercise together. I think it's going to be mind blowing and so powerful. But I've got I just had something that came up on the way over here that I wanted to talk about with you first.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm sure I'd love to talk about what you want to talk about, but I'm kind of wondering if you're having doubts about doing the shame attacking, maybe we could, there's lots of really great reasons not to do shame attacking. Actually, I wonder if we could talk about that first, like maybe what do you think?
Shall we pause for feedback or keep going?
Well, let's do feedback. This is good. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to fall back and just give you empathy that maybe you've changed your mind about doing shame attacking, and maybe there's some scarier things about shame attacking that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah. So what grade did you give yourself on your response, Rhonda?
Well, I gave myself a B because I started floundering at the end. I didn't know how to close it and actually dive into the conversation.
And what grade did you give it, Matt?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure what grade I would give it because I was so in the moment of trying to play that role. I think I would have continued to yes, but. So if the goal is to put an end to that behavior, I think I would give it a C or something like that.
Okay. Okay, that's great.
Now, should we try a role reversal? Let's tell people what a shame attacking exercise is. By the way, we often use jargon and don't explain our words to people. Who wants to explain shame attacking? I know, Matt, you've done some of the most incredible curative work with shame attacking exercises. Why don't you tell our users what this technique is?
Yeah, so it's a super powerful in vivo, meaning live exposure work for folks who have social anxiety and have concerns that other people are scrutinizing them and judging them. A lot of the thoughts that people have when they're socially anxious are that people are going to judge me if I do anything at all out of line. And so shame attacking is basically designed to overcome the fear of doing things that are out of line or unusual or weird. And you deliberately do things to try to provoke other people's judgment of you while in public. And so you might lie on the side of the sidewalk. You might go up and ask people in a restaurant if you could have a little taste of their food. You might do jumping jacks or make animal noises in a large public place. You might shout out, "I'm a shy person," or something like that. You just do weird stuff. And then the experience is one, well, nothing bad happens. And all of this worry that I had that people are real judgmental and this shame that I had vanishes and a new feeling of kind of liberated, calm, and self-confidence arrives. It's just that people never want to do it.
Exactly. And people with all forms of anxiety almost never want to use any form of exposure. But this is one of the most tremendous techniques. But it takes courage on the part of the patient and courage on the part of the therapist. Now, before we do a role reversal,
can I just add something to that?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So, Matt, it's all. I'm wondering what you think that it's all. We're provoking other people's judgments, and other people do judge us. So we want ourselves and our clients to know that even if people judge us, we're still okay. We're going to live through it, and it's not going to crush us.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the, so relieving to realize that we don't have to base how we feel on what other people think.
Yeah, and if we want to focus on that, we could also illustrate the I judge you feared fantasy technique. But we'll try the shame attacking, see if we can get the yes but, and then the shame attacking, and then we could do the feared fantasy. And there are rules for shame attacking exercises too. It's a powerful technique, and it has to be done skillfully. And one rule is that you should make a fool of yourself, but not make other people uncomfortable. In other words, it shouldn't be hostile or aggressive. You wouldn't want to do something bizarre in a hospital, for example, because it would be disrespectful. And also in terms of the response to patients who resist exposure at the last minute, this is one time where I sometimes do use a little bit of high pressure or even coercion, especially if I have getting an A from the patient on empathy and have trust. Sometimes I say, no, we're going to do it now. Come on, no excuses. And I kind of force the issue, but let's do a role reversal. And Rhonda, you be the yes butting patient, and Matt, you can model the response.
Okay, sounds good. So Rhonda, I'm excited because today we were planning to go over to the grocery store and do some weird things and see what happens, called shame attacking exercises. What do you think about that?
Gosh, Matt, I've been looking forward to this all week. I'm really excited about it, but I had this really problem crisis with my husband yesterday, and I thought I really want to go over that with you.
Yeah, so on the one hand, you're feeling excited about doing the shame attacking that we've been planning to do, and on the other hand, you had this crisis come up with your husband, and it's very tempting to talk about that with me right now. And I noticed that I'm feeling a couple of different things. I think I feel torn and conflicted because on the one hand, I want you to know that you're really the one making the decisions and in control of your therapy, that this is for you. And on the other hand, I'm worried that there might be an element of, like, maybe you're feeling kind of afraid to go out there and do the shame attacking exercises, and that if we miss this opportunity, there might be another thing that comes up next week and the week after that, and we would be kicking the can down the road for your recovery. And so I just feel kind of conflicted about that. And I also noticed that this has happened a couple times, and I even feel a little bit irritated or annoyed with you.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah, because when we make a plan and get all ready to go, and I'm feeling kind of excited about seeing you recover doing this technique, when you pull back and at the last minute like this, I feel kind of sad and disappointed and a little bit angry with you for doing that. And so there's another part of me that's saying, let's just do this. Let's go out there and do the shame attacking, even though it feels kind of scary right now. And you had this conflict with your husband. My thinking is that concern will go away if we address the shame attacking.
Okay.
Now, what grade did you give yourself, Matt?
Probably a D or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
What did you give it, Rhonda?
I gave it an A-.
Great. Tell us what worked and what didn't work. Start with the part that didn't work and then talk about what you liked about it. By the way, this isn't a yes, but exercise. This is how to get reluctant, anxious patients to do exposure, I believe.
Okay.
But this is good too. What was the part that didn't work?
When Matt, when you told me that you felt angry at me,
mm-hmm.
I felt like I felt really scared and nervous. Like I'm making my therapist angry, and everything else kind of went away.
I think I spaced on something. Could I edit that slightly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the feelings of anger are well, for one thing, they're very awkward for me to feel towards you because I have so much liking and respect for you. And at the same time, I see you avoiding something that's incredibly important for your recovery. And I think that's hurting you. And I see you hurting yourself by avoiding facing your fears. And that's awkward because if anyone else were hurting you and preventing you from recovering, I would feel angry with them. But you're the one who's preventing your recovery right now. And so I'm feeling a little bit angry with you.
Okay, I love that. Now I would give you an A+.
Okay.
I love that. Yeah.
Thanks for pointing out the error. That was good.
And what did you like about Matt's approach?
Well, I liked how you said in the beginning that you're feeling torn and conflicted, and that therapy is for me and I get to make all the decisions. So that was very empowering. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can make all the decisions. And I want to decide not to do the shame attacking. And then I liked how you kind of you just kind of flowed into, you're wondering if I'm afraid to do them and that this might be a lost opportunity. And I actually did like when you said the concern is we could talk about the thing with your husband and then next week something else might come up. And what you just said right now, Matt, about I see you hurting yourself, and if someone else hurt me, you would be angry with them. I loved all of that.
Like they're standing in the way of their recovery right now. Yeah. And if someone else were to do that, mad at them.
Yes.
Okay, so that's is that helpful for you? Do you want to do a role reversal back, Rhonda?
Okay.
I can just start out as the reluctant shame attacker.
As an aside, what we're doing now is called deliberate practice. Mm-hmm. And if some of you listeners are shrinks or general public and you want to develop expertise in communication or the 5 secrets of effective communication, when you get lower than an A, you can keep doing role reversals until you get up to an A. And that's called deliberate practice. And we're going to show you an example of it right now. But it's very important to do this kind of practice if you're trying to learn how to handle a difficult interpersonal situation, either in therapy or in life outside of therapy. And it's also important to know that when you try to use the 5 secrets, which I'll add them as to the show notes, so I'll put a link to the 5 secrets, that you will make errors, and we call it learning through joyous failure, that you'll fail over and over when you're trying to learn how to use the disarming technique or feeling empathy or whatever technique or techniques you're trying to learn. But if you check your ego at the door and you learn what you're doing wrong and practice over and over, you can get up to speed pretty darn quickly. And there is no other way of learning the 5 secrets of effective communication other than role play, instant grade. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Let's revise it and then do role reversals and see if you can get up to an A and how long that takes you. So go for it.
All right. Rhonda, I'm super excited to go out and do the shame attacking exercises with you. I just don't think that this is the right week, though, because I had kind of a crisis occurring in my relationship that I'd like to talk about with you.
Oh, gosh, Matt. Wow. I am also, I've been really excited about doing the shame attacking with you. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, and I feel a little mixed feelings I feel kind of conflicted actually, because on the one hand, this is your therapy. And of course I want you to make the decisions about what it is that we're doing. And on the other hand, I'm feeling like kind of curious about if you're feeling afraid to do the shame attacking. And I'm also wondering if we're missing an opportunity to really support you in overcoming your social anxiety. And it's something we've been talking about a lot. And I'm feeling also an urge to kind of push you forward to do the shame attacking exercise, because I'm kind of wondering if we did push through that, the crisis that you're talking about with your partner might resolve as we address the shame with the social attacking. And I'm also feeling a little sad because, and maybe a little like protective of you, because when I'm kind of wondering if, well, I kind of see you as, avoiding doing the shame attacking, is kind of hurting yourself to overcome the shame attacking, and you're standing in your way of, really experiencing all joy and, a lot of joy in life and happiness in relationships that you've been really wanting to have. And that by avoiding doing the shame attacking, you're kind of hurting yourself. And I'm feeling protective of you hurting yourself. And I would be really upset with somebody else who is hurting you. So I'm kind of feeling upset that you are standing in the way of your own recovery. And I'm wondering what your thoughts and feelings are in reaction to the things I'm telling you now.
Yeah, I would give that an A. Yeah, there were parts of it that I might edit slightly.
Yeah.
But overall, it was an A, because I felt that you were really holding my feet to the fire in a gentle, caring, empathic way. Mm-hmm. And that actually felt like supportive. Like I think at some point you said, I'm wondering how I can kind of support you. And that I felt like a little bit more resistance, like you're supporting me you're going to go try to make me do this.
Yeah.
But when you were more just talking about this sense of yours that I'm avoiding something really important for my healing, and that's something you feel kind of angry at me for doing, it was just so real and authentic that I did like that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, good job. And how did that feel to you, Rhonda, to get up to an A so fast?
It feels a tiny bit unbelievable, and I'm really grateful that happened. I'm grateful that you are being honest with me, Matt, because that is really the only way to learn and grow. And I really appreciated the feedback that when I said, how can I support you, could continue on with the resistance. And in my head, I was thinking, I don't want to say I'm irritated or angry because I reacted personally to that so far. And I also heard, my voice saying, don't say it. And then I heard this other voice saying, David says what therapists don't want to talk about is anger. So I forced myself to say it.
I noticed you approaching, and I think the first time you said, I'm curious, I'm feeling curious. And I was hoping that you would get to the anger. And then when you did, it was you were really hitting it out of the park.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Well, nice job. Can we push on to the question from Thomas?
Sure.
Thomas, by the way, is an older gentleman who has been emailing me frequently for the last couple of years, and it's given me great pleasure to provide a little support for you, Thomas, and have enjoyed our correspondence. And you always ask really cool philosophical questions, and so I wanted to include a couple of your recent emails, and then we can shoot the breeze on philosophical questions that I think are of interest to probably 100% of our listeners.
Nice. Okay, so Thomas asks, here's the headline: do we have a self, and does God exist? And so thank you, Dr. Burns, for giving me your time and attention. I appreciate it, even if we don't agree. I have talked about whether or not God and the self exist. David Hume made the argument about not having a self, only perception. Of course, questions arise if we don't have a self.
And then he also
the comments about
Nathaniel Brandon, who I think had something about self-esteem or something like that.
Okay, so Thomas also commented on Nathaniel Brandon when he said, why do we use the words who, him, her, he, she, they? I certainly don't believe Nathaniel Brandon's BS. He talks about it.
No, you got to read it properly.
No, because our readers said they don't like.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yes, we'll call it BS. He called it something slightly different.
Yes. Nathaniel Brandon talks about a teenage self, a father self, a child self. And all that is just BS. But do we have any self?
All right. Very cool. Some of my favorite questions is, does God exist? Does the self exist? And I'll let either of you folks who are interested jump into the fray first.
Well, Matt has a lot to say about it.
Well, I want to first just say I've really appreciated your introducing me to the thinking of Wittgenstein, David, that although it was a really confusing read, I eventually did make it through philosophical investigations.
Did you? Bless your heart. Did you understand a word of it?
I highlighted the parts that I understood, and I've still been using the same highlighter for many years after that.
Wow.
There's mostly I don't understand it, but the parts that I get are that words don't have any inherent meaning. They only come together in this, he called the language game, and the game can have, language can be meaningful, but it could also just sound, it could just be kind of mashed potato-y and not have any meaning at all.
Right.
And questions like, is there a self, or is there, fill in the blank, are actually not meaningful questions.
Right.
It's pretending that sound we're making self has some intrinsic, is something that we could
have or not have.
And I still find it very confusing even to talk about set of ideas, but I think it's important in mental health not to get caught up, because like you could go around also thinking, am I worthwhile?
I was just going to say that just now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you're reading my mind.
And get all caught up in that when we don't have to. We can't answer questions that don't have meaning, and so letting go of that pursuit of trying to answer it. And I think it's also what Zen practitioners do when they give koans to their students. Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
I can answer that right now. I'm going to put.
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Barely, yeah. So
that's now, my right hand clapping.
now I hear the sound of one hand clapping. But if people get caught up, what's the meaning of life? These kinds of questions, and we can't answer them. Like there's just not enough specificity. Like, what part of life are we talking about? And if the question doesn't make sense, we shouldn't expect that we be able to answer it. And I hear Thomas feeling frustrated. Like, what's the answer to these questions? And it may just be a relief to know that there aren't any, and let's go on and enjoy our lives.
Yeah, and it's not that there aren't any; it's that the question has no meaning. It's not that there's an answer that's missing; the question is missing.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. It took me a while to get it too, and then it just made more and more sense over the years. And the way he came to that, by the way, he was. See, he had written this book as a teenager that Bertrand Russell said was the greatest book in the history of philosophy. And but Bertrand Russell had never met Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein had never been to college, but he was obsessed with the problems of philosophy, and he thought he had solved it with some kind of, there's an external reality, and our language is a symbolic expression of representation of what's out there. And this is kind of how Aristotle thought as well. And then he was at peace because he thought he'd solved the problems of philosophy. And he went on, just tried to live a normal life. He tried being a fisherman, and then he tried teaching grammar school. But he couldn't make a goal of it at any of these things. He'd never been raised in this fishing village in Norway where he went to live to try to survive, and so he couldn't make it as a fisherman. And then he got a job as a grammar school teacher, and then he was fired because he used to get frustrated and shout at the kids because they didn't seem to understand what he was saying. And but he was at least at peace, thinking he'd solved the problems of philosophy with that book that he sent to Bertrand Russell. It was never really published, although Bertrand Russell made copies of it and distributed it throughout Europe. And he became, he started a lot of the 20th century movements in philosophy and became known to people as, the smartest man in Europe and the greatest philosopher maybe in human history, but no one had ever met him. And then when he was about 40, he met someone and said, "Oh, did you hear that some economics student at such and such a university found a loophole in that book that you wrote, that you sent to Bertrand Russell? And it really now doesn't solve all the problems of philosophy." And this just crushed Wittgenstein. And he went and applied, I think, at Cambridge or University or Oxford, one of those two, to go to. He said, "I've got to go back to college and study philosophy and try again." He got all obsessed with, like, does free will exist? Does God exist? Does the self exist? Things like this. He was going crazy trying to solve them, and so he applied. And when somebody spotted his application and handed it to Bertrand Russell, who was the chairman of the Department of Philosophy, and said, "Is this the young man you've been looking for all these years?" And Russell immediately recognized that, yes, this is Ludwig Wittgenstein, and said, bring him into my office right now, so because I want to talk to him. And he went in, and Bertrand Russell says, "I've seen your application to be an undergraduate here at Oxford," or wherever it was, Oxford or Cambridge, and he says, "I'm sorry, we can't accept you." And then Wittgenstein said, "Well, why not? I've always, in high school, I was a very good student. I had tutors. I really want to study philosophy." And Russell said, "Well," he says, "why won't you accept me as an undergraduate?" Bertrand Russell says, "Because you're already the greatest philosopher in the world. And I'm willing to give you a PhD today using that book you wrote as a teenager as your PhD dissertation. But we would want to accept you as a fully tenured professor in philosophy in our department. That's what I'm willing to offer you."
Wow.
And Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein said, "I can't do that because I don't know anything." And they argued, and finally Bertrand Russell persuaded him that they would give him a dormitory room and free room and board and a full professorship. And all he would have to do is just let people come to his dormitory room once a week, and then he could talk to people there. That would be his only duty, because he didn't think he was smart enough to teach in a classroom.
Wow.
And it was really sad because he suffered from terrible depression, and he had several brothers who all committed suicide. And also he was sad because he was gay, and those were the days when it was very shameful to be gay. But then he sat in that dormitory room and talked to all the great philosophers of Europe would come, and then he would start shouting at them like he did the grammar school children, because he said, "Can't you see what idiots you are and how screwed up your thinking is?" And he kept trying to make this point. And after the seminars or before, he'd take notes and put them in a metal box under his bed, thinking, if the building ever burned down, maybe someone could find those notes and maybe there'd be some value there. But he never tried to publish anything when he was alive, and he ended up kind of as a homeless person. Mm-hmm. But they found that book, and it was published as Philosophical Investigations, and that's now many people recognize that as the greatest book in the history of philosophy. And he took the exact opposite approach that he'd taken when he was a young man. And the way it came to him, he was walking past a soccer game, and he was trying to think about language and how do we solve this? Do we have free will? And a soccer ball came and hit him in the head. And then he suddenly thought, wait a minute, maybe language is just like soccer. There's just rules that we follow. Maybe it's not trying to describe some external reality. And so, then he said, oh, that's the mistake that Aristotle made. That's where Aristotle was screwed up. He kept thinking, like I used to think as a teenager, that words describe an external reality. But that's not how language functions. It's just we use sounds that come out of our mouth to do various things. And then some people make the mistake of thinking if you have a noun, it must refer to a thing. So we have this noun for self. Well, like we say to a child, behave yourself. Well, all that means is stop acting nasty right now. And so once you recognize that it's not a thing that you could have or not have, it's just a sound that we use in dozens of different ways. And there's no essence of a self. There's no essence of a game. There's no essence of something called free will. And that philosophy is just essentially a lot of nonsense. And once you recognize that, you're free of it. And it's just the same as cognitive therapy, because you see people come to us depressed and they say, I'm not worthwhile. I'm worthless. There's nothing special about me. And it's as if there's such a thing as a worthwhile or a worthless human being, but there is no such thing. It's just nonsensical concepts. Our acts can be worthwhile or worthless, or our skills can be superior in some areas and other areas, but there's no such thing as a worthwhile human being. And the goal of therapy is not to go from, oh, I used to be worthless, now I'm worthwhile, now I'm special, oh, life is great, I'm so special. It's to throw these structures away and get into life. And once you see it, it is so simple. And poor Wittgenstein, that's why he was so lonely, because he didn't have smart people like Matt May who could get it. He only had a few students his whole life who ever understood what he was trying to say. And I can understand his frustration, because I haven't found many people that can get it either. So the question isn't, does God exist? But I don't understand your question. What do you mean? What are you asking me? Like, are you asking, is there some spot in the clouds where there's something, little city called heaven with someone called God sitting there? Is that what you're saying? Or what are you saying? What are you asking me? And you, once you realize that question has no meaning, you let go of it and live your life. I'm just grateful to be here with Matt and Rhonda, two people I just love to death. And it's a joy being here. And if you said, oh, well, Matt has no self, I would say, what are you talking about? You know, what would it be like if he had a self? What would it be like if he didn't have a self? It's just nonsense stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, I'm feeling really close to you right now. I remember that you had done your Amherst College thesis on Wittgenstein, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And you got to know this fellow who had suffered so much, had been like a prisoner of war, and had, in a time when it was just impossible to be accepted by society. He was gay, and then he couldn't hold a job. He ended up being homeless, but yeah, he was recognized as the most brilliant philosopher who'd ever lived. But he was alone and misunderstood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at his picture right now. I've got his book from his student. Norman Malcolm wrote this beautiful book. If you want to read about Wittgenstein, that's the book to read, because that one you can understand. It's called Ludwig Wittgenstein, a memoir, and it's just real short. But every time I pick it up and hold it in my hand, I just start crying, because his contributions, it was like the Buddhas. It was fantastic, but nobody got it, and he was pretty lonely and pretty frustrated. And I just wish I could say to him, I got it. It took me 6 months to understand what you were trying to say, but once I saw it, it's so obvious and so and it just changed my life. That's for sure.
I want to add to Matt's. I'm feeling also like super close to you, David, and I really appreciate the passion that you have for life and that you show toward Liechtenstein, and I really admire that.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. Yeah. We all have people who kind of we can connect with, and others are harder to connect with, and some people just touch our hearts. And like my little kitty here, Sweetie Pie, touches my heart too. She's just sitting on a perch in my office, and she's just so proud to be in that perch. She hangs out with me, which I also appreciate greatly.
Yeah. Well, shall we do one more question?
Sure.
Okay, let's do.
I have one other idea for Thomas, which is that there's an illusion of having a self too. It's not just a philosophical non-question that can't be answered because it's not a question, but the idea that the belief that we have a self is a large part of our suffering. And for example, the other night, I discovered this unopened box of Girl Scout cookies in my cupboard. And within about 45 minutes, it was all gone. And then I started to experience self-loathing. I started to feel guilty and bad that I'd eaten all those cookies. And I think that the part of the reason I was feeling that way is that I thought, I should have had more discipline or self-control or willpower or something along those lines. And then I realized, I've succumbed to this idea that I have a self and free will, that as opposed to just being a person with a brain, if I think I'm a person with a brain that also has a self that can modify what my brain does through this magical process called free will, then I'll feel bad. Then I'll feel like I've got some defective self. It didn't jump in there and stop the flow of dopamine that was going to occur and tempt me into eating those cookies. And so a lot of our suffering when we're feeling ashamed or we're blaming other people is based on this distortion that David identified, self-blame and other blame. We don't treat ourselves like if a dog came into the room and ate all the cookies, that's just what dogs are supposed to do. And we wouldn't think, that dog has a bad self and should have exerted its free will to not do that. It just hasn't received the training, and it's got the brain it's got going into that situation. And so it didn't actually have some other outcome that could have occurred. It might in the future, like you could train the dog not to do that. And you could train yourself not to eat all the cookies or come up with all these methods, like David has discovered all these methods to change habits. But to expect that I've got some self that's going to intervene in that process is leaving me powerless, because what I actually need is practice and new methods. So I thought I'd bring that into the conversation and see where it goes, because I've developed this fascination with it. I think so much of our suffering is based on this idea that, that guy over there should have done this other thing, as opposed to he's a person and his brain is designed to do precisely what he did. And so we can accept that we don't have to hate that other person. There might still be some consequence that would be required. But anyway, I thought I'd open up that for conversation, because I see it connecting to a lot of points within team that are interesting to me, like the reattribution technique. I think gets at this, that our brain is making, if our brain is making the decisions, well, we didn't create our brain. We didn't choose our genetics, and we didn't choose the environment we were born into. And so the self-blame doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, I think you could make, I love what you're saying. I think you could make the argument that it's impossible to feel depressed without the concept of having a self.
Yeah, you've talked about the death of the self.
Yeah,
as part of the recovery from depression.
Yeah, absolutely. But when I wrote Feeling Great, I had it chapter on the, that the concept of a self is nonsensical. And I took it out because it was so upsetting to people. They were threatened by the idea that there isn't a self. And I wasn't saying there isn't a self. I'm just saying that it's a nonsensical concept. There isn't anything there that you don't have. You're yapping in a kind of a meaningless way. And Fabrice was, the first host of the Feeling Good podcast, and he's been doing work with psychedelics, and I think the magic mushroom, which has some promise in the treatment of depression. And he mentioned, I'm probably just repeating myself, but I think it might be worth repeating that one of the things that happens when you take magic mushrooms is you suddenly see that this is a nonsensical idea, that you have a self that's separate from the rest of reality. And he thinks that's how why the psilocybin or magic mushroom treatment is effective. And I thought that's a pretty cool idea there that Fabrice Nye had. It makes a lot of sense to me. The farthest I went in the book Feeling Great is you can't judge yourself. That, it's meaningless to say you're worthless or inferior or less worthwhile. You can have skills that are less worthwhile, like my tennis skills suck. Sometimes I miss the ball completely most of the time. But does that mean that I'm less worthwhile as a human being? That notion has no meaning, and letting go of it, that's what's involved in recovery from depression. So it really is a cool thing. Where I still differ from you a little bit, Matt, is that to take a Wittgensteinian approach, to say that we have no free will, that would be another meaningless concept to my way of thinking.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about something that is in fact an illusion and define it. So let me think where we're differing there. I think what I'm saying is it's
get rid of self-blame because it's painful and because and if you screwed up, accept responsibility and try to change your behavior. But it's not that you have a self that's not good. Your behaviors can be better or worse, and focus on that and leave the rest alone, because the rest becomes not nonsensical. But to say that we have no free will is to make another nonsensical claim. That's what Wittgenstein would say, and that's what David would say.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to make a slightly parallel point. What I'm trying to say is that the way that we typically imagine that we have free will is an illusion. We oftentimes imagine, and I'm not talking about it's not that we can't make decisions. In the words of Sam Harris, it's just we can't choose what we're going to decide. We can't intervene in what the brain is going to do from the outside. We don't have an extra brain in a self that can jump in there and pull levers or change physics, so that our brain's just only going to do what it's going to do. And we're people with brains, not people with brains and a self and free will.
Okay, well, we're still on slightly different pages, but it's close enough. And let me just say to you, Thomas, that it's meant a lot to me to correspond with you, and I just have a lot of respect and liking for you. And thank you for making a great contribution to our podcast today. I don't even know if you listen to the podcast, but if you do, I hope you like it. And hope you have a little fun with hearing how much excitement your cool questions stirred up.
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas.
Yes. And thank you, Matt, for expanding our discussion on this topic. And Thomas, your response to Thomas really added so much.
Thank you, Rhonda. I really just enjoy hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
Should we call it quits for the momento, or?
Yes.
Is this enough for a
Yeah, I
for
think
a day?
This is good. It's been 48 minutes, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we'll quit without rambling too much more. And all of you, thank you for being listeners, and let us know what you like and dislike, and topics you want us to do, and questions you want us to answer, because that really gets us kind of fired up, and we have a lot of fun responding to you with this kind of show.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.